Moving on, I've got another one, and this one probably I won't talk about as long, but this is one that was kind of a pleasant surprise to me, and it's Star Wars Myths and Fables. This is a book that the second I saw the cover for it online when they first announced it, I lost my mind. Because it is a Jedi Knight fighting a motherfucking dragon, and that doesn't get any cooler than that. That's awesome. That is freaking insanely awesome. This is a collection of, I think, 8 or 9 stories. And it's not real thick. You can see it's not a real thick book. And it's got like the cloth binding on it, kind of like the Legends of Luke Skywalker book had. And it's along those same lines, but it's not focused on Luke Skywalker or on a single character like that one was. But this one is more, this one is interesting. Some of the artwork in this book is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Every story has a little, like hand-painted poster at the beginning of it. Kind of like the first story here. It's got the cover art on it. But there's, so all these pictures in here would make amazing posters. They'd make amazing posters. And I would put every single one of them up in this room if I had them. Every single one of them. The stories that are in this book, I should have had them written down, but here I'll just go to the contents page for you and just read it straight to you. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 stories in this book. They are called The Knight and the Dragon, The Droid with a Heart, Vengeful Waves, The Wanderer, The Black Spire, Gaze of Stone, The Witch and the Wookiee, The Dark Wraith, and Chasing Ghosts. Out of all of these stories, right? Now, unlike Legends of Luke Skywalker, some of those stories were blatantly not true. Because if they are, that means there's a sand flea running around Tatooine somewhere telling everybody that Luke Skywalker, one of the most powerful Jedi ever, listened to him and he thought it was the Force. Really? That story sucked. I hate. If you liked it, you liked it. I hated that story. These stories, on the other hand, kind of tell it in a different way. I get, maybe it's the way they're written, to where you don't know whether they're canon or not. You don't know what aspects of it are canon and what aspects are not, because remember what Ahsoka said in Rebels. All legends are based off of some bit of fact. All legends are based off of some bit of fact. So these stories in particular, and they jump all over the place, time-wise, time period, location in the galaxy-wise, character-wise. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to tell you who the Jedi is in this first story with the dragon. But as soon as you start to read it, you're going to realize exactly who it is. And maybe you know just from context clues. But The Knight and the Dragon was a great story, one that I really enjoyed. The Droid with a Heart was a prequel story that was kind of centered around a strategy droid from the Clone Wars that's around General Grievous a lot. It was all right. Vengeful Waves. This story goes back further than anything else in any canon ever. Vengeful Waves goes all the way back to almost the formation of the galaxy and tells the story of these two species that are on this ocean planet who work together and are kind of symbiotic off of each other. One gets arrogant and decides that they're better than the others, whatever. So it's kind of a neat story. The Wanderer is an interesting one too. At first I thought it was a Luke Skywalker story, and then the longer I read it, I was like, no, this can't be true. That can't be a Luke Skywalker story. But it's a great story too. It's about a town. I don't remember the name of it. About this town, and there's this Wanderer that shows up and protects them 3 times over the course of several years, and it's a Jedi. He has a flaming laser sword. Great story. The Black Spire was another one, and they're really pushing this Batuu thing, this Galaxy's Edge thing. The Black Spire, obviously it takes place in Black Spire Outpost. Gaze of Stone. This was my favorite story in this book, and I'm going to tell you why. Remember when they came out and said in canon the Sith world is now called Moraband, and everybody got all pissed off because it was no longer called Korriban? This book, this particular story, I take as canon. Just because of the way it was written, it would match in perfectly with everything else. There's not really a legend kind of feel to this story. It actually feels like a balls-to-bone, flesh-and-blood story. So I believe that one is canon. I believe. I mean, none of these could be canon. I don't know, but I feel like this one is canon. And if you've read it, you know what I mean. This is a story about a new Sith Lord, and I'm going to look up his name. I think it's Darth Kalbeth. It's about a Sith Lord on Korriban. It's called Korriban, not Morriban. According to this story, the planet used to be called Korriban, and then they changed it to Morriban for the new canon. So it was called Korriban at one point. But it's a Sith Lord story about an apprentice that's trying to outsmart his master. It's awesome. It's a great story. It's absolutely great. And how this plan blows up in the apprentice's face. It's so great. It's absolutely my favorite story in this book. Loved it. There's a story called The Witch and the Wookiee, which was, I guess, bordering on a legend. If you look at the way it's written, it's these pirates and smugglers that land on a planet trying to hide their treasure that they just stole. And they come across an old hut in the jungle in the swamp. Kind of had some Dagobah vibes to it. And there's a woman in there that is just willing to help them. Said she hasn't seen anybody in years. And she's a witch. And what happens with the witch and them is awesome. And obviously there's a Wookiee involved. It's in the title. And the witch and the Wookiee. But this is a story that really does feel like it could be just a legend that some pirates got scared one time and told around the campfire somewhere. It's an awesome story. The Dark Wraith is another great story, and I'm pretty sure it was about Darth Vader. Just from the art for that particular chapter, I'm pretty sure it was Darth Vader. But it was kind of a story making Darth Vader to be the boogeyman. How if you're not, and you know, it's these parents telling their kids stories. If you're not good, the Dark Wraith will show up and take you. And they make Vader out to be the boogeyman. And then finally, Vader does actually show up in the story. And it's the same city that the Wanderer would come to, and the Wanderer didn't come to save him this time. Like, it's really, really kind of an interesting story. That one's kind of cool, but they really paint Vader out to be the boogeyman of the galaxy. And then the last one is called Chasing Ghosts, which is kind of a neat little smuggler story, but it's really nothing galaxy-shattering. I had a lot of fun reading this book. All the stories in this were great. The only one that I really didn't care about that much was the Black Spire story. And the only reason, and I'll talk about that here in a minute with the Crash of Fate. I really didn't care for the Black Spire story that much. But beyond that, these were great. I mean, look at some of this artwork, like the Tusken Raiders on the back. This thing is gorgeous, man. The artwork that goes into it was just beautiful. You guys have got to pick this one up. I went to Barnes & Noble to get this one. If you get your books from Barnes & Noble, I had to special order this one because they didn't have it in stock. But it was definitely worth the wait. This is a great one. And I read it in a day, obviously. I mean, it's not that long. I read it in a day. So you guys won't be wasting your time reading this particular book. And the last...